In the world of advanced robotics and artificial intelligence, Hollywood has completely poisoned the public's perception of reality. Movies make you believe that building a bipedal humanoid robot is just a matter of tightening a few bolts and uploading a personality chip. The reality is an absolute agonizing nightmare of mathematics and physics. Getting a 200-pound machine made of titanium and servo motors to simply walk across a room without falling over requires billions of calculations per second. You have to balance fluid dynamics, gyroscopic stabilization, and incredibly dense neural networks. I have spent my entire life teaching machines how to navigate the physical world without crashing. But the ultimate, tragic irony of my existence is that while I was obsessively calculating the perfect center of gravity for my robot, I completely failed to realize that the center of gravity in my own marriage was completely, fatally unbalanced. My name is Victor. I'm 38 years old, and I am a lead kinematics engineer and AI systems architect. 6 years ago, I married Eleanor. When we met, Eleanor was a mid-level public relations manager for a tech startup. She was brilliant, fiercely ambitious, and entirely consumed by the glamorous, fast-paced culture of Silicon Valley. She loved the networking galas, the venture capital dinners, and the relentless pursuit of unicorn status. I was the quiet, introverted engineer who preferred the sterile silence of my laboratory to the noise of a cocktail party. But we were a team. She was the voice, and I was the brain. For 5 grueling years, I spent every single weekend, every holiday, and every dime of my personal savings building my absolute masterpiece. I called it Project Aura, Artificial Understanding and Reasoning Android. Aura wasn't just another clumsy mechanical puppet. I had coded a completely proprietary, revolutionary neural net and paired it with a fluid dynamic hydraulic skeleton. Aura moved with the terrifying, liquid grace of a real human being, and its AI could process natural language, read micro-expressions, and generate responses with zero latency. It was a technological holy grail. A machine like this wouldn't just revolutionize manufacturing, it would change humanity. The patents alone were conservatively appraised by independent auditors at roughly $100 million. I told Eleanor this was our empire. I promised her that when Aura was fully functional, we would launch our own robotics firm. She would be the CEO, and we would be billionaires. But Eleanor didn't want to build an empire from the ground up. She looked at my grease-stained hands and my exhausted, bloodshot eyes, and she decided she didn't want to share the multi-million-dollar payout with the mechanic. She wanted the gold, she wanted the glory, and she found a corporate shark who was more than happy to help her steal it.
The foundation of our marriage started to shatter when Eleanor's PR firm was contracted by a massive global technology conglomerate called Omnicorp. The CEO of Omnicorp was a man named Harrison. Harrison was 45 years old and the absolute poster boy for Silicon Valley arrogance. He was a guy who wore $500 plain black turtlenecks, cultivated a fake Zen persona, and spoke entirely in aggressive, empty buzzwords like paradigm disruption, synergistic alignment, and quantum leaps. He didn't actually invent anything. He was a ruthless corporate financier who bought up brilliant startups, fired their original creators, slapped his sleek corporate logo on their tech, and presented it on massive stages as his visionary genius. In my industry, guys like Harrison are considered absolute parasites. Suddenly, Eleanor was spending all her time at Harrison's glass-walled corporate campus, claiming she was restructuring his global brand strategy. The red flags didn't just quietly appear, they flashed like a critical system failure on my monitors. First, the profound, unapologetic disrespect. Eleanor started actively belittling my life's work. "Victor, you need to wake up," she scoffed one evening, tossing her designer bag onto our kitchen counter. Harrison manages 50,000 employees. He ships global tech. You've been sitting in a basement playing with a metal doll for 5 years and haven't made a single dime. You lack corporate vision. Nobody cares about your actuators. They care about the branding. Second, the intense secrecy regarding her devices. Eleanor changed the passcode on her laptop. She started taking phone calls in her car, sitting in the driveway with the engine running for 40 minutes before coming inside. Third, and by far the most terrifying, was her sudden, highly specific interest in my server architecture. Eleanor, a woman who barely knew how to restart a frozen Wi-Fi router, suddenly asked me exactly where the physical prototype for Aura was stored, how the encryption worked, and if the neural net could be migrated to an external cloud server. When a PR manager suddenly asks about the encryption protocol of an unpatented $100 million artificial intelligence, you don't answer the question. You run a deep-level security audit.
When you write a proprietary AI engine worth potentially $100 million, you don't just leave it sitting on a standard hard drive. My entire home network and my lab servers were routed through a custom hardware firewall that logged every single byte of data moving across the local area network. One night at 2 a.m., while Eleanor was supposedly sleeping in the guest bedroom, my phone vibrated with a critical priority alert. Someone was actively attempting to execute a mass file transfer from my secured development server to an unauthorized external cloud storage locker. I didn't storm upstairs and kick the door open. I simply isolated the connection, artificially slowed the transfer speed to a crawl, and mirrored her laptop screen directly to my massive monitors in the lab. She had the Slack desktop app open, communicating in a private locked channel with Harrison. I didn't just find an affair, I found a premeditated, massive corporate heist. Harrison wrote, "My lead engineers just looked at the compressed demo build you sneaked out last week. They are completely losing their minds. The bipedal kinematics and the language models are 10 years ahead of anything Google or Tesla has. If we launch this as OmniCorp's new flagship product at the global Keynote next month, our stock valuation will triple. Have you secured the master source code and the physical prototype yet?" Eleanor replied, her words dripping with a casual, horrifying cruelty that made the blood freeze in my veins. "I'm copying the master repository from his server right now. The idiot actually thinks I care about his little science project. Tomorrow, when he goes to the engineering summit in Boston, I'll hire a private moving crew to crate up the robot and clear out the lab. We'll launch Aura on stage. I'll serve him with divorce papers the morning after, and we'll be on your jet to Monaco. He has no money, no corporate lawyers, and no patents yet. He's just a naive tinkerer, Harrison. He won't be able to do a thing." Harrison responded, "You're a visionary, my love. The tinkerer is going to fund our entire empire." I sat alone in the dark, the hum of my servers filling the absolute silence, staring at the glowing monitor as my entire reality shattered into a million pieces. My wife of 6 years was sleeping with a corporate parasite. Together, they were actively plotting to steal 5 years of my blood, sweat, and genius, rebrand my life's work as their own, make billions of dollars, and leave me utterly destroyed. They thought I was just a naive tinkerer. They didn't understand the level of absolute, unmitigated digital destruction a senior AI systems architect is capable of coding.
If you want to destroy a corporate thief, you don't lock the vault. You leave the vault wide open, but you replace the gold bars with highly unstable dynamite. I didn't confront her. If I did, Harrison's army of corporate lawyers would bury me in injunctions, claim I stole the code from them, and tie me up in court for a decade until I went bankrupt. I needed them to steal the code. I needed Harrison to proudly stand on a stage in front of the entire world and claim ownership of my machine. So I went to work on the back end. I canceled her file transfer, but I didn't lock her out. Instead, I created a perfectly cloned master repository folder and placed it right on my unprotected desktop. To Harrison's lead technical directors, the source code and the AI training data inside would look absolutely flawless. It would compile perfectly. When they turned the physical robot on in their secure corporate testing environments, it would function beautifully, walking and talking exactly as they programmed it to. But deeply embedded in the absolute foundational math of the natural language processor, buried so deep in the neural rates that no QA tester on Earth would ever find it, I wrote a logic bomb, a digital kill screen. I called it the exposure protocol. I programmed the code with a highly specific, voice-activated trigger. I knew Harrison's ego. I knew that at every single global keynote he had ever hosted, he ended his presentations by asking his new product the exact same pretentious question: what is the future of humanity? I hard-coded the AI so that when it heard that exact phrase spoken in Harrison's specific vocal frequency, the payload would execute. It wouldn't just crash the robot, it would forcefully override the local user controls. The robot would tap into the venue's local Wi-Fi, hijack the presentation display screens through an automated casting script, and overwrite its own text-to-speech engine with a hard-coded script I buried in its registry. I packed my bags for the engineering summit. I kissed Eleanor goodbye. "Have a great trip, Victor," she smiled, handing me my coffee. "Take care of the lab, Eleanor. You know that robot is my masterpiece." I left the house. I let her bring the moving trucks. I let them steal the bomb. Now, they just had to put it on stage.
I didn't fly to Boston. I drove straight to the downtown offices of the most ruthless intellectual property and corporate fraud litigator in the state. I handed him my original, time-stamped, air-gapped hard drives containing the true source code, my 5 years of developer logs in the official patent documentation for Aura's neural net, which I had secretly expedited and secured exclusively in my own name a month prior. Then, I showed my lawyer the Slack messages of Eleanor and Harrison actively conspiring to steal the robot. My lawyer smiled like a shark smelling blood in the water. "Victor," he said, "Omnicorp is a publicly traded company. If their CEO takes stolen, copyrighted intellectual property, claims he invented it, and presents it to his shareholders and the public to boost his stock price, that isn't just theft, that is massive federal securities fraud. He is lying to his investors." We drafted a massive federal lawsuit in an emergency cease and desist order, but we didn't file them. We waited. We let Omnicorp spend $15 million on marketing. We let them build massive hype for the greatest technological leap in human history. We let Harrison invite 10,000 tech journalists to a massive stadium in Silicon Valley, with millions more scheduled to watch the live global live stream. They were building a massive, glittering glass castle, and I was holding the only stone. Friday morning, the Omnicorp Global Keynote. Over 10,000 journalists, investors, and fans were packed into the auditorium, and over 10 million people were watching the live stream on YouTube. I sat in my dark hotel room, drinking black coffee, watching the stream on my center monitor. Harrison strutted onto the stage to thunderous applause. The stage went dark, spotlights swirling, and then Aura walked out. The robot moved perfectly. The crowd gasped in sheer, unadulterated awe. Eleanor was standing in the VIP front row, beaming with pride, waiting for her payday. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrison announced into his headset microphone, his voice echoing across the stadium. "For 5 years, our in-house team has been working in secret to build the future of artificial intelligence. Today, we are proud to introduce Aura." He walked up to my masterpiece. He placed a hand on its sleek titanium shoulder. He looked out at the audience, striking his dramatic visionary pose. "Aura," Harrison asked, his voice dripping with arrogance, "what is the future of humanity?" I looked at the monitor. I knew the code. The audio sensors in the robot processed the exact frequency and phrase. The logic bomb triggered. The robot didn't recite its pre-programmed corporate speech about synergy and peace. Instead, Aura slowly turned its head and looked directly at Harrison. Its glowing LED eyes flared bright red. "The future, Harrison," the robot's synthesized voice boomed across the stadium's massive PA system, "is federal prison." Harrison froze. The crowd went dead silent. Instantly, my automated casting script hijacked the stadium's massive 100-foot LED screens behind Harrison. The Omnicorp logo vanished. It was replaced by a massive high-definition screenshot of the Slack conversation between Harrison and Eleanor. The robot continued speaking, its voice completely devoid of emotion, but echoing like thunder. "Fatal error. Stolen intellectual property. This neural network and hardware were stolen from Victor. Eleanor and Harrison committed corporate espionage. Omnicorp is a fraud." Harrison's face turned the color of wet concrete. He frantically waved his hands at the control booth, screaming, "Cut the feed! Cut the audio! Shut it down!" But my code had locked out the central network. The massive text messages detailing their affair and their plot to steal the robot remained burned onto the 100-foot screen for 10,000 people and 10 million livestream viewers to read perfectly. In the VIP section, Eleanor dropped her phone. She put her hands over her mouth, looking like she was going to pass out. The journalists in the crowd immediately pulled out their phones and started recording and taking hundreds of photos of the giant screen. Before stadium security could even figure out how to unplug the main server, a team of process servers and local police, coordinated by my lawyer, walked right onto the stage. They handed a thick stack of federal lawsuits directly to Harrison, who was standing next to the glowing red robot. I took a slow, deep sip of my coffee, smiled at the frozen YouTube stream, and texted my lawyer, "Execute." You cannot unring a bell when an AI robot rings it on a global live stream. The fallout was an absolute apocalyptic corporate massacre. Within 10 minutes of the broadcast, Twitter was completely on fire. Tech journalists dug up the patent and copyright filings my lawyer had submitted, proving instantly that the robot belonged to me, not Omnicorp. Because Harrison had stood on a stage and lied to the public and his shareholders about owning a $100 million technology, Omnicorp's stock price plummeted 70% in a single afternoon. The SEC launched an immediate, devastating investigation into the company for massive securities fraud in defrauding investors. The board of directors at Omnicorp convened an emergency meeting that same night. They fired Harrison for cause, stripped him of all his stock options, and publicly threw him under the bus to save the company. He was hit with massive federal lawsuits from his own furious shareholders, completely ruining him financially. Eleanor's life was vaporized. Harrison, realizing he was facing federal prison, immediately blamed her, telling federal investigators that she was a rogue PR director who had supplied him with stolen prototypes without his knowledge. She called me from a hotel room, sobbing so hard she was hyperventilating. Victor, please! The FBI contacted me. Harrison is suing me. You have to tell them you gave me permission to take the robot. Please, I'll do anything." "I didn't give you permission, Eleanor," I said calmly, leaning back in my chair. "You're the one who walked in and stole the bomb. Good luck in the real world." I hung up and blocked her number. During our divorce settlement, she had absolutely zero leverage. Because she was facing criminal charges for corporate espionage against me, the judge awarded me 100% of the marital assets and denied her any alimony. She walked away with millions in legal debt and a felony record. It's been almost 3 years since that keynote.
Omnicorp's board, desperate to settle my federal copyright lawsuit and avoid total bankruptcy, paid me a $45 million out-of-court settlement just to make the IP lawsuit go away, and they returned my physical robot. I kept 100% ownership of my AI engine. I took the money, founded my own independent robotics research institute, hired a team of incredibly talented, passionate engineers, and we officially launched the Aura platform last year for medical research. I never have to work for a corporate boss ever again. Last I heard, Eleanor avoided prison by taking a plea deal, but she's completely blacklisted from the tech and PR industries globally. She is currently working at a kiosk in a suburban mall, selling cheap plastic phone cases, watching people walk past her, watching tech reviews on their phones. Harrison is still buried in federal litigation, completely bankrupt, living in a cheap rental apartment far away from Silicon Valley. If there is a lesson to be learned here, it's this: never try to hijack a machine if you don't know the engineer who coded its brain. If your partner thinks they can use you as a stepping stone, steal your genius, and leave you to rot in the basement while they take the credit, don't panic. Don't fight them for the hardware. Smile, hand them the prototype, and let them confidently roll your machine out in front of the whole world. And right when they think they've won the future, just wait for the voice prompt and watch their entire reality crash. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments what's the most satisfying technical failure you've ever witnessed. Stay sharp, trust the code, and always back up your files.